Welcome, fellow gardeners, to the Rudimental Gardening channel. So today we're going to have the second video of a two-part video series dealing with transitioning your plants from summer to fall, or your garden from summer to fall. And here in North Texas, we've been having 100 plus heat. We got a little break from it, but here, starting today and the next few days, we're going to be 100 plus heat again. So I've been holding off on the fall plants, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you, though, how I amend the soil mixture after I've done the base soil mix. So here I've put together a small batch of my soil mix, and I'm going to just fill a couple of containers here and show you the components that I use. Now, this is no recipe that you have to follow. I'm just showing you what I use and explain why I use it. If you want to modify this or change it or just stick with whatever you're doing, that's fine. Everybody has their own way of doing things. So I get the containers full, and then here's a look at some of the components that I do use. So I have Epsom salt, bone meal, garden lime, some kind of granular fertilizer, and earthworm castings. So those are the main ingredients. I probably won't be using garden lime in this initial application. I will apply it as a top dressing to serve as a calcium supplement once the plants are flowering and bearing fruit.
Please keep in mind, we are basically starting from scratch and trying to build a soil base for our plants that's nutrient rich and provides an environment for them to produce to their best ability. If you already have a raised bed or a batch of soil that you amend regularly and build over the months, that soil probably is already rich in nutrients and has the soil biology already available. So you don't need to add nutrients to it, or you need to add very little nutrient. So adjust the addition of amendments accordingly.
So the first thing I'm going to use is the granular fertilizer. Now, you can use any granular fertilizer. Just remember, you don't really need a whole bunch of nitrogen in this. This particular one that I'm using, I believe, is a 2:6:3 nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium ratio. This granular fertilizer is more of a long-term, slow release fertilizer, so you may need to add a soluble fertilizer mix to help sustain it, to give it immediate uptake of some nutrients. So the next thing I'm going to add is some bone meal. This is high in phosphorus, as you might think, so it's good for the roots, even though the fertilizer I just put down has a higher phosphorus content as well. This bone meal will probably break down sooner and give it a little burst of energy to get these little guys started. So again, a couple of handfuls is what I put in typically. And in a minute we're going to mix all this together. But the next thing is Epsom salt. Now, some people use it, some people don't. It's up to you. It's magnesium sulfate, so magnesium and sulfur are part of the macronutrients that plants require. Magnesium for photosynthesis, sulfur for building strong structures within the plant itself, and it has other roles as well. But it is critical that they have it. So again, I put one, maybe a little more, handful of Epsom salt. And later on, you can just put some Epsom salt in your watering can or whatever you use to water, and it can be a soluble mixture as well, and you can just apply it when you water from time to time. So the next thing is worm castings. Now, worm castings, some believe in them, some people don't, but when you got to remember, with a container, there is no soil biology in the container. The base mix that I filled these things up with has no nutrient content in it at all. It's just got the water retention of the peat moss and some of the drainage capability of the perlite. The rest of it is basically filler. But these worm castings have hormones and auxins in them that really stimulate microbial activity, which is what breaks down everything in your container, your fertilizers and everything else that goes on. So I do think that they are a good addition to any garden really, but particularly to a container garden. So now we're just going to get a trowel and mix this all up. So this is another nice thing about containers is you can do it pot by pot. So you can just make your mix. If you just had one big pot and you wanted to supplement that, you could do it right there in the pot. Take some of the existing soil out, maybe add some peat moss, add some other filler, and then put these nutrients and fertilizers in there, and just mix it up, and you're ready to go. If you're doing 10, 15, 20 pots, obviously you want to do it in bulk. It's just a lot quicker. So mix it up, tap it down a little bit, and then once this is done, you're basically ready to plant. I would water it thoroughly. Keep in mind that peat moss doesn't really take to water right away. It needs to be submerged in water for a little bit, or at least exposed to water for a considerable amount of time before it actually absorbs it. Once it does absorb it, it retains it, and it will reabsorb water from that point forward. So just make sure you mix it. There is no rocket science here. Again, no exact recipe. So at this point, I would water it down and then plant some seeds. Always better to water it down first, so you have a good saturated soil mix. Then plant your seeds and just cover those up. Set it aside, let them start to germinate.
When watering after you have planted your seeds, make sure that you don't disturb the seeds. So I typically will put some mulch of some kind. I typically use straw, but you can use whatever you want. And that will prevent the water from just splashing around and potentially dislodging the seeds. So that concludes the second part of this two-part series. Get out and plant some seeds and get your fall garden started. Please subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell so you'll get notified of any future videos coming up. Take care.